10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, my friends in Sasquatch land. Yet again, another Tuesday night here at Discover Sasquatch Studios. And do we have a show for you all tonight? Mr. Carl Crew is in the house tonight. Actor, screenwriter, museum owner, movie star. Mr. Carl Crew has done it all, my friends, and he is backstage. And we are very excited to have him with us tonight. I just wanted to start off by saying hey to everybody in the chat. The Scottish Wild Man is in the house. Shane and Nelson's in the house. BF Bud. Nana Anna. Boots on the Ground with Barb. How is everybody's Halloween? This is our Halloween special. My friend, Mr. Gary Shooty from Show Me Bigfoot, set us up with Mr. Carl Crew, and I'm very excited to have him in the house. So we have a lot to go over. So let's get this show started. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carl Crew.
Hello there. Happy Halloween, everyone. Yeah.
Hello, my friend. Hello, our new friend here at Discover Sasquatch. How are you tonight?
Good, man. I'm eager.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Yeah, I've been very excited for the show ever since Gary introduced us, and I've been, doing the research and everything on you, and I think a lot of people are going to be amazed at the life that you have had and the things that you have accomplished in your life. So why don't we start off a little bit and just tell a little bit about your growing up. If everybody doesn't know that Carl is the great nephew of Mr. Jerry Crew. We all know who Jerry Crew is in the Bigfoot world. So he grew up with Bigfoot royalty, and we are going to touch base on all that at the end of the show because Carl has a lot of amazing things that he has done first, and I want to touch base on all that. So go ahead, Carl, and let us know how a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I was really blessed to grow up in San Francisco when I did. Yeah, it was an amazing time. I actually, my father was a cardiovascular surgeon, and my mother was a concert pianist, and they had a gospel quartet for 50 years. So I felt like I grew up in the Christian Partridge Family. But it was very interesting because I whenever I would go out on tour with them, I was like, I want to get on stage. I want to get on stage. And it wasn't about me at that point. But so I joined a repertory theater group when I was like 9. And I was, for 16 years, I was doing repertory theater till I was like 20 something. And so I grew up in a repertory theater group in San Francisco. We performed for prisons and churches and schools and all kinds of crazy stuff. But it was an incredible experience. And I always knew I wanted to do film. my father, he was so cool. I miss my dad so much. He passed in 2017, but I've heard Bigfoot stories all my life. But he was so cool. He would, like on a Wednesday night, he'd go, "Get your coat." And I'm like, "Ah!" And my mom would go, John. And he goes, "God, we're going to go to a movie." He goes, "It better be a G. It better be a G." And he would take me to see like R, Slither. He took me to Jaws, and he made sure I had a hot dog in my hand with a shark bit off the leg and the leg floated down. He was hilarious. And he knew how to trigger me because I was like always way over expressive all my life. So I would I go, "Dad, I got this cut up my hand. What is that?" He goes, "Oh my God, that's brain cancer." I go, "Ah!" He just loved my reactions. But eventually I had to gear down everything. So I studied a few years with a guy named Michael Olton, who was a casting director, and he was in a bunch of movies like Shampoo and everything. And I geared everything down from stage to screen, and I came down to Hollywood. But before that, I was a mortician. And I lived at a mortuary for 5 years. I was an apprentice embalmer, and a whole lot of weird stuff with that. A very interesting. It came in handy when I played Jeffrey Dahmer later in the film that I wrote and produced. But yeah, it was a really interesting.
Well, sorry. What made you choose that path? Well, growing up the way you did. Well, what made you choose that mortician?
Well, to me, I mean, I grew up seeing my dad's heart surgery, so a mortician, they're already dead. They're not going to be in pain. So that was fine, But I always kind of grew up in the Addams family's attic, so to speak, as opposed to Ant on the basement. Yeah, so I loved all these creepy, kooky things, creepy ghosts, Cats with a Ghost, Bewitched, all that stuff. And it was funny because in 4th grade, my father just announced all of a sudden, "We're going to Hawaii for 2 weeks in the middle of school year." I'm like, "Yeah!" And so, but we had to do homework by the pool every morning for a while. But he bought me a book to read on the plane. And he thought he was buying me just a regular little ghost book, but it was a ghost paranormal investigation book. So that just set the course for a lot of stuff in my life, interest in what the supernatural really is. And then that combined with going to Playland when I was 9, Playland at the beach, the old place they tore down in 72, I think. And I got to see Laughing Sal and go on the dark ride. That just set the course for my entire life also, yeah. So, but then, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I just cleared my throat.
We finally moved down. I moved down to Hollywood, and yeah, and 6 months later, I got. Well, I used to collect cars. The first car I ever redid was a 1949 Packard, and then I bought 2 crazy limousines from this crazy guy, a pink 1960 limo, and a fog gray 1961 limo, and also a 58 Pontiac Chieftain convertible, pink and gray. And I moved all these cars down to Hollywood when I was down here, and that's how I first got on a movie set, because they rented my cars. And I think it was a movie called Modern Girls, yeah. And they were shooting it downtown LA, and I drove the convertible down on the freeway, down the 405 to the warehouse they were shooting in. And it was sunny, and I got a sunburn, and my hair was standing straight up, and I walked right in and go, there's the door, man. Put him in a suit. Put him by the door. So that was my first rule. And they said, "You can't say anything because it's a SAG movie." And I'm like, "Okay," but I did, But then I met the casting director. And then from there, he called me a few months later and said, "They're casting for this movie called Blood Diner, and they hate everyone. So why don't you read for the role?" I said, "Fine." And I actually went up to the Hollywood Hills and to Jimmy Maslin's house, one of the producers, and I went in and I read for the part. But I said, "You know what?" They said they want him to be retarded. This character wants to be retarded. I'm like, no. I'm just going to play him slow and really animated. So that's what I did. And 2 days later, they sent it to New York, and I got a call saying, "You got the part," So that was my first lead role in a film, Blood Diner. Actually, it just came out on Blu-ray after all these years. That was 87, baby. Yeah.
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 So how many films have you been in since then?
I don't know, about 17, something like that. Yeah. Doing a lot. I'm sorry?
And they're all the same. They're all the same. Blood, gore, guts.
No. I do all kinds of stuff. I did what was that movie? Polyphony. I played a magician. It was for kids, and then my audience was kids and puppets. And I didn't have a script, man. I winged it the whole time. It was hilarious. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I did the Jeffrey Dahmer film. What I personally love is horror comedy because I love to laugh and be scared at the same time. That's the magic, you know. But I did the Jeffrey Dahmer film, and I wrote it from police interviews with Jeffrey, and it was the first one to come out. He was still in court when we announced in the trades that we were shooting it. And it was huge. I had a fax machine that exploded. Literally, smoke curled up from it. It was like 20,000 faxes came in. And that was crazy. But you know why? Because we announced we are shooting this in secret. If you ever want to get attention, you say that, and like, wow, it just exploded. So, yeah, so that was a whole nother roller coaster. And actually, I'm the only one that can say that Jeffrey Dahmer saw my film in prison before he was murdered.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a Facebook page, Jeffrey Dahmer, The Secret Life. There's a whole hour of Maury Povich from back in the day when it was before about Are You the Father? And
right. I
we were
read
on
that.
there. Yeah. We were on there with all the family members. And actually, 2 months before, we were in Milwaukee, and I was literally interviewed at Jeffrey Dahmer's front door before they tore the building down. Yeah, and that was amazing. That was amazing.
That's
So,
quite the experience. Did he
yeah,
did he give you a review?
I'm actually, I know one of the family members who I became friends with, and she told me she was the only one who went to visit Dahmer in prison. And that's how I found out that the guard showed him the film. And I said, well, what did he say? And she said he just scooted his chair really close to the TV. Is that the guy that played me? And they go, yeah. That's all I know. I got a chance to meet him. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I'm actually writing part 2 right now. Yeah.
Nice. What's the latest one you've worked on?
Well, I'm just coming off 2.5 years of writing my Jerry Cruz story, the history of my great uncle, and it's a feature film called The Print, and that was 2 years of going through stacks of yellowed newspaper articles my Uncle Jim had collected, who was there, and stacks of magazines, and interviewing incredible people like Peter Burns, who's 96 years old, who hunted the Yeti in the Himalayas. And that was an amazing thing. So, and really what it was all about was taking the legend and paring it down to the truth. What is the absolute truth?
Right.
And getting rid of all the nonsense, all the aliens and the demons and all that garbage. They're real, and they're human. They're basically human. So yeah, well, we can go into that later. But
yeah, that's gonna be a yeah. I can't wait for that to come out.
yeah.
So along the way you're doing your movie things. When did you start collecting and collecting your oddities? And like we see one behind you right now of the Elephant
that's
Man.
the skeleton of the remains of Elephant Man. See if we can get a better look at it. There we go.
Yeah, there he is.
And it's an anamorphic digital scan from the original bones from London, and it was done for the Broadway play with David Bowie. And I know the producer, and he donated it to the Institute with a cabinet that has the 3 original books and the playbill from David Bowie. Yeah. But amazing, Joseph Merrick. And but I actually had an antique store in the Haight-Ashbury for a while, and I was into the antique business too. I missed everything else in that. So I started seeing a lot of really weird stuff, and I used to deal in jukeboxes and slot machines and a lot of neon clocks, and they called me Mr. Neon, whatever. And I'd go down and take down giant signs and restore them, but I would use San Francisco Neon's original glass from the 30s that they don't even make anymore to restore everything. So yeah, I got a lot of big schooling on all the types of neon glass. Anyway, but then I started always seeing these weird little things like the body of such and such, and the weird little 2-headed someone, and I started to understand, I'm more interested in that, and I literally sold everything and just got dead things.
Right. Yeah, you have a. Yep, go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, I started the California Institute of Abnormal Arts, which was a live venue and museum almost 27 years ago. And we have an auditorium, and I have 3 dead performers here that are over 100 years old, and they're all in the Ripley's 2018 hardback book. I have a dead clown, Achille Chatouillet, and he's got a centerfold in the book. And when I give a tour, it takes like about an hour and a half. And we cover Achille, and we have Fat Choi, which was a magician for underground opium dens in 1914 in San Francisco. And I have Madame Wong, was a midget magician jewel thief from San Francisco. There she is. She's a little darling. She looks terrible now, but oh well. Huge
I love
history.
That poster. I love that
it's
poster.
amazing. It's amazing. You should see her now. Oy, oy, oy. She's embalmed with ginseng and mercury. Yeah, wasn't pretty.
Really?
But amazing history behind all these things. She was arrested at the Golden Gate Theater in San Francisco in 1913 for hypnotizing a whole crowd and ripping them off. Yeah. So these are just all these details that go on when I give the tour. I give tours now. And we have a whole auditorium with two-headed babies, and I have the monkey's paw. I have a quote haunted painting that everyone thinks is haunted, but I don't believe it. But it's on Google, and a lot of people freaked out with it. I think it's the power of suggestion, but I know when something's haunted. You know what I do when something's haunted? Blam! Right in the trash, baby. Yeah. Papa don't take no mess. And believe me, I've thrown stuff away. But I have some shrunken heads from Ecuador. I have just all kinds of stuff, and everything has a history to it. So you get all the history when you take the tour. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing stuff. What kind of hoops did you have to jump through to get like live have mummies in your possession?
Oh, well, that's not they're all pre-1925, so I don't need a permit, and I know that because I used to be a mortician. But there wasn't, the hoops were just having live music, and we serve wine and beer. I didn't want to serve alcohol, hard booze. It's just a nightmare. And so I mean, no one has any idea of what it's like to run a club in Hollywood. Oh my goodness, it's like we got worldwide press, but I've made a dime. But we just they call me the Barnum of Burbank Boulevard because I've done so many actual freak shows here for 26 years. Most of the freak shows around nationwide, from Florida, from New York, Coney Island, everywhere. They come and perform on my stage. And we actually did the girly freak show here for 5 years. And that was with, her name was Slimenstra Hyman, and she was the Guar goddess from the band Guar. And she would throw 1,000,000 volts of electricity out of her face over the crowd at the end of every show.
Oh.
Talk about a showstopper. Yeah,
right.
It was a Tesla club, but who could, like, it was amazing. So, and then of course, Tim the Torture King, Tim Cridlin, brilliant performer. These are all like Guinness Book people. And amazing stuff. There's Bat Cakes, and all these performers were maximalists, and that's what I am. I am a maximalist. I'm not a minimalist. I appreciate minimalism, but maximalism, you have to be that to stand out, to be not faded in the crowd. Maximalism, man, bam, you never forget it. So I appreciate that even in all the performers. We've always been known for doing really weird, offbeat everything. California Institute of Abnormal Arts. When we first started out, we were totally underground. We didn't have license one. We were just, how it started was, I actually took over this building to do a distribution company for my films, Millennium Video. And we had like 8 people in on phones calling. We were producing, we're putting out all the videos of movies I did. And we got eaten alive by Ma Bell and the UPS, eaten alive. So in about 9 months, we were closed, and I'm in this big building. My friend goes, "Hey, I want to have an Academy Award party." I said, "Fine." And the next day, I got a call from a friend who said, "You can have all the sets from Gary Collins' home show, all of them, but you have to take them all." I said, "Okay." 3 40-foot trucks coming down Lancashire from the set yards. We literally put them all in here all the way through. It was the most funnest thing, and just changed the whole place. And then we had our Academy Award party, and it just was off the hook. And then it was obvious, it was like, okay, and because I've studied all this weird stuff all my life, it was, California Institute of Abnormal Arts, the CIA club. Back in the 90s, it was kind of cool, and not so much anymore.
I think it's pretty cool. I still think it's
Well,
pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, they call us the CIA club or whatever, you know. But I mean, I've studied all the, you know, MK Ultra, all the crazy stuff for many years, so it worked pretty well, and we were really, really doing well. We had a rubber 20-foot tall brick wall on hinges and a fake Brady Bunch fireplace. And if you walked through the shadow between the two, it looked like you walked through a wall. It was the secret entrance to the CIA club.
Nice,
And
nice.
we were doing like 300 people a night, and other people got bummed out and dropped a dime. And well, we got shut down by the cops and the fire department and helicopters, and it was hilarious. 300 people here. And, you know, they all, when they were put out, they all stood across the street and yelled at the cops for closing an art club. I'm like, okay, everyone, you got to go home now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it was about 8 months later, we got all our licenses and all our, you know, then we were up legally. So we've been legally open for 26 years. Yeah.
What's
And,
the craziest thing that's ever happened within those walls?
yeah, I wrote a 500-page book on the first 15 years. Yeah, we've had so many shoots here. We had just a lot of shoots. I mean, that's basically what we've been doing the whole time.
Right.
Craziest thing. Well, oh man, I can't even tell you some of it. But
Yeah.
we do burlesque. We do tasteful burlesque,
Yeah.
vaudeville style. You know, we had some hilarious shows where they did Silence of the Lamb burlesque. They did Ghostbusters burlesque. They did Stephen King, The Shining burlesque, and it was absolutely hilarious. That was a company called Creepshow Cabaret.
Put the
We
lotion
also
on the
did,
skin.
yeah, they were hilarious. People would just stand up roaring with laughter. But originally, how we started out, we had rock bands, and we had the weirdest performance art between the bands. And people would walk out of here like, I don't even know what I just saw. I don't know. You know, just walk out laughing. Like, we made the performance art so weird and out of the box that that was just how got our moniker, you know, like Abnormal Arts. And yeah, so that was really it was a very interesting time. We did get a lot of press on it, and but you know, it went through all these different phases over the years. We were hardcore circus. I mean, we had Rob Zombie's art director came down and studied us for a while when we were hardcore circus with stripes and everything, and he went and did Night of a Thousand Corpses, and that was a lot of the visuals that came from our inspiration. And but then we recently, about 6 years ago, we went all ancient Chinese secret. So we redesigned everything. We added on top of the circus to this kind of Chinese, scary, ancient Chinese thing, and it came out really cool. I love it. I grew up basically in Chinatown in San Francisco. Yeah, I went to school on Nob Hill and dropped down into Chinatown every day to get my fried wontons. And I met some incredible Chinese families that they literally showed me underground. They showed me opium dens. They weren't being used, but they just took me in. They made food for me. I was like, my name is Carl Crew, and they call me Klala Clue. And I called them up after, this is Klala. I said, I know you have one of your relatives on display in your place. I want him in my museum. And they knew I had a dead clown here for 20 years. So they brought down Fa Choi. And he's the magician for underground opium dens in 1914 in San Francisco. Yeah. And he is in his own little case. And he's got 24 karat gold teeth. And he looks terrible. He's embalmed with pure mercury. Yeah. So he looks terrible.
How'd you come across Madame Wan?
Madame Wong was a friend of their family. Fuck you, Kyle, we want our relative display too. I said, yeah, baby, bring her down. So she was installed in her own little place. And big story, I have actually the cover of San Francisco Chronicle 1913 showing her being arrested in the Golden Gate Theater. And she did these shows where they hung black dragon heads in the theater and blow opium smoke on people, get them all stoned. She's come out and take your jewelry. And she stole the cross from this one guy, and he wasn't stoned yet. So they got up and he went outside and got a cop, and he brought him back in, and they witnessed her. She had borrowed the Lotus Jewel from the De Young Museum in San Francisco, made it disappear in her act, and she never brought it back. and she was arrested and went to prison and actually died in prison. It's actually very sad. But they brought her down, and she's on display with a lot of the jewels that she stole. A lot of them are not real. But she's holding the very cross in her rotten little hands that got her busted.
Really?
But we also have her magic poster, which is that poster I sent you. That's gonna hang in there also. But the amazing thing is on the floor in a little case is the lotus jewel. It turned out to be fake. And the museum was so embarrassed they had a fake something on display they didn't prosecute. So they insisted that they had the lotus jewel on display with her. So you can't write this kind of stuff, it's so amazing. So
yeah, the history behind it. I mean, they all have their own history behind every exhibit that you have. It's just it's unreal.
We have the arm of Claude de Lorraine, and that is on. You can go on YouTube. That was on Ripley's, believe it or not, with Dean Cain. And you can go on YouTube and type in "arm of Claude," and you'll see the clip. And he was we have his desiccated arm in a shrine from 1918. And he was a French nobleman, and his wife was a singer, turn of the century Paris. And she wouldn't perform during 1918, during the war. But when the war ended, I will now sing. And she got on the Paris opera stage and slipped and broke her neck. And he freaked out and shoved his arm right through a window in shock, and they had to amputate his arm. But instead of throwing it in the trash, he enshrined his own arm. So we have the shrine of the arm of Claude. And you're not supposed to photograph it. They're supposedly cursed, because it's supposedly cursed if you do. And we didn't tell that to Ripley's, and they went off the air. Oopsie. But Dean was really cool, yeah. But there's also a thing where you can leave something and get a wish in 24 hours. And we got a trunk load of stuff from 26 years of people leaving stuff. I can't even tell you what's in the trunk, but we're putting a glass cover on it so you can see it. And it's very interesting stuff. But oh man, what's in the auditorium? Holy moly. My haunted painting I got in a lot of trouble for.
So who screens these for you? Who comes in and checks if things are haunted? Do you do it yourself, or do you have someone that comes in and
oh no, I do it myself. Yeah,
do it yourself.
I'm well versed.
Right.
I can tell immediately if something's been used in a ritual or something. I get like a thumb on my heart. I go, and then it just goes right in the trash. But my haunted painting, I actually had an antique store, and I met a lot of really creepy dealers in Haight-Ashbury, and some of them even dealt antiques, yes. And this one woman had the thickest accent in the world. She was my favorite. She knew my taste. And I saw her 25 years later down here. I'm like, and she was my friend. So sweet. She's 96 years old. She came up and gave me a hug. I go, oh I'm so happy to see you. I'm so happy, my friend. She goes, this is my number. You call me tonight. No. And I did. What can I do for you? My friend, I have something I want to give to you. I'm like, okay, what is it? You have to wait till I die. I'm like,
that's
okay. She died 2 weeks later.
Oh.
Gulp. I got a call from one of her family members. Is your name Carl? Yeah. There's a painting over here with your name on it. I said, fine. Picked it up, brought it back here, hung it in the main room. The first night I had people run out of here screaming. I ran out there and I go, what are you doing? They're like, I couldn't even talk. I go, no. You just ran out of my place. I got to know why. She goes, you're messing with us. I said, what? She said, we saw the eyes move. And I almost burst out into laughter. And I'm like, and before anything else, they just left. They were so upset. So I come back in. What happened to her? Oh, she saw the eyes move. Ha, ha, ha. 5 people said, we saw it. Now, I've never seen it. And you know what I'd do if I saw it?
In the trash.
Bam! Right in the trash, baby. Someone took a picture of it and put it on Google, haunted painting. Hundreds of people came down for the tour. And no one would stay around it for more than a second. And I don't believe it's haunted at all. 3.5 years ago, it got stolen on Halloween night. And half of me is like, whatever. And half of me is like, Don't let the gate hit you on the way out, baby. But that thing came back in 3 days, leaned against my gate with a note that said, F this. Yeah.
Really?
So I'm dying to know what happened to the last person, but yeah, it's just people go, is that her? No, it's like thrift store art. It's called outsider art. It's really kooky and creepy, and yeah, I don't believe it's haunted at all, but I have a copy of the Spear of Destiny. You ever heard
I'm
of
not
that?
familiar with it. No.
Child, need to go back to Sunday school, baby. The Sword of Longinus, the spear that pierced the side of Christ as he hung on the cross.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, baby, we're gonna have some sessions, child. Yeah, this is one of the 17 replicas that Himmler had. He had the real one for Hitler. You know, he was like went all over the world trying to find the most powerful objects in the occult world that they could
Right.
harness for their power. And in the occult world, the spear that pierced the side of Jesus is very powerful.
Right.
So he had 17 replicas made from 2,000-year-old material, so no one would ever figure out which one was the real one. Why? Because the legend of the spear is if you have it in your possession, you rule the world.
Right.
It's traced to Frederick the Great, Barbarossa, Napoleon, all these rulers. And Hitler had it for a couple of months there, but fell out of his hands and everything went in the toilet. But I have it on display. Obviously, it's one of the replicas because I'm ruling the world.
Right.
But the beauty about this is the College of Surgeons of Edinburgh did a study on it in 2018, and they know for sure that Christ did indeed die on the cross. He didn't fake it. Hey, I'm back. He died. How do they know he died? Because when he was pierced by the Roman centurion Longinus, what came out? No idea. Blood and water. So he was dead. That was arterial. Dead, dead, dead. Even though he was seen by 500 people 3 days later. Can I get an amen? Yeah, baby. I'm talking Roman historians, people who are not anything to do with Christianity, saw him after he raised from the dead.
Right.
What's going to really frost your berries later when you think about it is the number of prophecies Jesus fulfilled from 300 years before. I'm talking 349, child. Okay, first one, child gonna be born in Bethlehem. Bing! One is impossible. I'm talking 349 here. The Jews are like, okay, it's a Sabbath, so just break their legs and get them out of here. They went and broke the legs of either thief on either side of the cross, pierced his side. Oh, look, he's dead already. We don't have to break his legs. Ding! 349. Not a bone shall be broken. That's going to mess you up later. Yeah. What's really amazing, I tell people after when I give them this tour and show them this, if you go on YouTube, you look up a guy named Ron Wyatt. And Ron Wyatt was an archaeologist from America, but he was really well known in the Holy Land because he found Noah's Ark. There's a whole YouTube video on it. They found it on Mount Ararat. Exactly, no question, they found it. He also found the remains of Sodom and Gomorrah, which were calcified cities. They found the balls of sulfur that fell from the sky. And he also found the place where the Red Sea parted for the Israelis to cross on dry land, and the Egyptians followed in their chariots and horses. They've dove down and found the line of skeletal horses and soldiers and chariots. They found it. So he was very well known in Israel, and he was walking by this garbage dump in Israel, and he pointed his finger, we have to dig here. And they're like, yeah, okay. And so a bunch of kids and people helped him start to dig in the side of this mountain. And it took months, and they would break through and find another little tunnel. And all of a sudden, something would happen, and all the kids would go, ah, and they run, it's like Indiana Jones, And he would have to get more people to help him, and they broke through another section. And finally, they broke through this final section, and there was one other place to break through, and his son got sick, and he had to send him back to America. So he was literally with only one kid left when they finally broke through the last little small tunnel that he had to put himself in. And the kid got scared and ran. So he was alone when he slid through the thin little tunnel that ended up in a giant cavern that had all the furniture from Solomon's temple. It had the altar of the way bread. It had the altar of the incense. It had the big candelabra. It had the Ark of the Covenant. And he was wondering how he could tell the Israelis that the Ark of the Covenant was here. It was obviously hid here. And anyway, later on in life, my brother actually got to meet him before he died. But before he died, the reporters came to him and said, "Okay, you're about to die. You're about to go see God. Come on, you got to confess you didn't find the Ark of the Covenant, did you?" And he goes, "Oh, yes, I did. And now I'm going to tell you what happened. I didn't tell anybody yet, but I'm telling you now. When I was standing before the Ark, two men appeared for me. They appeared in front of me. And they said, 'This is reserved for a later time. You can't touch this.' And they said, 'Look up.' And he looked up at the top of the cavern, and there was a crack in the ceiling, a giant crack. And later he traced the crack up the mountain, and it went exactly to the very hole that the cross was put in on Mount Golgotha where Jesus died. The hole is still there. And if you know anything about the death of Jesus, when he died, everything went black. There was a giant earthquake, and the ground was rent open. And when he pierced his side with a spear, the arterial blood went down and ran into the crack and went through the entire mountain and landed on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. You can't write this stuff.
Right.
And he said they told him to take a sample of the blood. So he did. And he took it to Israeli scientists, and he said, "Yeah, analyze this." They go, "What is it?" I just analyze it. Let me know. They come back and they go, "Well, what is this? This is it doesn't have any male chromosomes in it. Whose blood is this?" And if you know anything about the virgin birth, baby, but more importantly, he said this blood is still alive. And they go, "Whose blood is this?" And he said, "It's the blood of your Messiah." And you could see these videos on YouTube and him telling the whole story. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I love all this stuff.
Right.
The
Right.
Nazis were deeply involved in the occult. They had the first spaceship. It was called the Nazi Bell. It hung over concentration camps during the war. You Google it and find it. And they had a lot of rocket technology they literally got from demonic sources. There was a book called The Reich of the Black Sun, which is about technology that came from fallen angels, which we have today in NASA. A lot of our science came from Operation Paperclip, where we kidnapped all the Nazi scientists after the war. But yeah, there's a lot of darkness. There was the Thule Society, which took Hitler through these rituals to open his third eye, and they were deeply involved in the occult. The Wuhlsburg Castle was their little ritual chambers. You know, it's they tried to pretty it all up and now, but yeah, they had a lot of really ugly stuff going on. But child, anyone who operated the Bell, the flying spaceship during the war, anyone who operated the Bell died of radiation poisoning within a few months. Yeah, that's when you get your information that side of the coin, baby. You're gonna burn. Yeah.
Huh.
But I just love this history. I love this fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very interesting. And you're right on top of it, that's for sure. You know all this stuff, and now how am I gonna put this? Why did
Spill it
you
out.
think it's why do you think it's you could have wrote a book about anything, your next project or anything? Why was it important to touch base on your uncle's, your great uncle's
Oh well, I mean,
legend?
the history's been in my family all my life. I mean, I've heard all their stories all my life, and I'm the one of the only writers in the family, so I knew I had to do it. I knew I had to do it, and I just really I really believe that Bigfoot's real, and it's based on everything I've heard and stuff. And I just felt I had to tell the story because no one has told it yet. And I mean, my great uncle named Bigfoot. Hello,
Right,
he
right.
named Bigfoot. Hello, my great uncle drew the map that 8 years later Patterson and Gimlin used to go to that site to get that film.
Right. And
He drew the map.
there's the link that I was telling you guys all about, that the secret was going to come out. He was going to let you know. the map that was drawn that Patterson and Gimlin used. What was it? How many years later? 9 years later?
It was
6
9
years?
years later. He
9 years
discovered
later.
it he drew it in like 58, and then they discovered it in 67, I believe. Yeah.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
So his uncle drew the map that Patterson Gimlin followed to
Yeah.
Patty.
Went
that
through
is
Al
just
Hodges and Bob Tickness. Yeah.
that just
But
blows
I
my
mean,
mind.
oh, the stories I found, it was wonderful. I mean, it's 2 years of dealing with all these crazy characters like Ray Wallace. Oh my goodness, Ray Wallace. Wow.
Right, the Wallace
Uh,
brothers were a big wrench in everybody's side back then.
Oh, it was hilarious. These guys are nuts, and Ray Wallace was nuts, man. He was talking about UFOs all the time, and like everyone just knew he was a teller of tall tales, and he was so mad that Jerry's thing that he turned into the Humboldt Times went worldwide in 1958. I mean, everyone was spooked. All his people that were working for Ray were spooked. They quit. They didn't want to work because they all heard Bigfoot. They all knew something was out there, and he thought they was being pranked at first, but he was so jealous of Jerry of the press that went out. I mean, this is 1958. I mean, global, yeah, amazing. And my great uncle was just horrified. I mean, he's like a Sunday school teacher, man. He didn't drink, and
Right,
he was the
little
coolest
guy,
guy, man.
little guy, thick glasses,
Yeah, he was so cool. I remember as a kid, he'd come and do tricks for me, and he was so cool. And he's a crew. He's definitely a crew. And um, yeah, but he was very well held in very high esteem by everyone who knew him and talked to him, even by Peter Burns and Tom Slick, the millionaire, who came in and hired them all to hunt Bigfoot. And Peter Burns, man, I interviewed him. He was amazing. Wow, I was so honored. He's 96. I actually sent him a copy of the finished script, and I don't know if he'll ever read it, but really just so honored to talk with him and hear his stories and stuff. Yeah, he hunted the elephants and just all kinds of.
Oh yeah, he's a legend.
He's a
He was a
legend.
big game hunter turned
Oh
Sasquatch
yeah,
hunter.
and he grew up on the
Yeah.
Ceylon tea fields in India. I mean, just the history, man. And I just saw a thing on Expedition Unknown where they were in Tibet, and they bring up Peter Burns, and Tom Slick. And so it's just so interesting to just because I'm a history. I love history, and I
I can
love
tell.
hidden history the best.
Right.
And I've feasted on it for years. So I don't know. And the Bigfoot documentary that just came out was really so cool to meet all these people, and they said they'd never really heard Jerry Cruz's side, and that's why I think it's so important to people understand. Yeah, and the reality of what Bigfoot is, because UFOs and Bigfoots, and that's what Ray Wallace was all. Oh yeah, I saw 29 UFOs the other night, blah blah blah. And there's even a site on Facebook, Bigfoot and UFOs, and I don't believe they're alien. I don't believe they're Nephilim. I don't believe they're demonic. Even Jerry Cruz's older son said, well, one of them stood up and then they appeared 200 yards down. I mean, how can that be unless they were Nephilim? Well, first of all, you have to understand that they travel in families. So one that stands up and then disappears and something stands up, then it's not the same. They're traveling in packs. Yeah. And that explains that. But, and, Jerry even said, supernatural doesn't leave poop in the woods. Hello again.
Right.
And actually, they took a sample of the fecal matter and sent it to Berkeley. And they finally got back on it. They go, well, this is definitely a carnivorous animal. There's little bones in it. And they said there's parasites from human and apes in it, too, that are only found in human and apes. And that doesn't mean, the missing link. The funny thing about a missing link, the whole concept of missing link, that assumes that there's a whole chain that's already in place. You're just missing one link. Well, guess what? There's no even a chain. They have nothing. They have absolutely nothing. So even the thought of a missing link is hilarious, because macroevolution is totally a religion, whereas microevolution, which is the adaptation of species, is absolutely true. There's billions of pieces of fossil evidence from that. But macro, there's nothing. Oh yeah, Lucy, Nebraska man, there's like 10. And they're like, oh, well, it was a bone of a pig, but, we don't care, because we don't want to let a divine foot in the door. That's what the leading evolutionary scientists, they don't want to know. Well, we'll just throw 10 billion billion trillion years in it, then something happened. We all came from slime,
Right.
So they hate that. And it's absolutely not true. So I believe that Bigfoots are, in the 1700s, there were earthquakes so big that the Mississippi ran backwards. And there were parts of Oregon, the rivers were decimated from the mountains falling. Indians went insane. They went into the woods deep, and through interbreeding and learning to live in the syncopation of survival in the woods, I believe they became Bigfoots, what we know today as modern day Bigfoots. This goes back hundreds of years, the wild men in the woods,
Right.
And so Ray Wallace, when he died, his kids said, well, my father, he did the fake footprints. He's Bigfoot. Bigfoot's dead, and
Right.
everyone
Right.
bought it. It went on worldwide,
But they didn't even look close to the carvings. They didn't even look close to the prints that were left in
oh yeah,
the
well,
castings.
they knew that he could never stand in front of reporters and give anything, so they waited till he died, and then they made the announcement, and then everyone bought it for a second, but then they saw the difference between the carved surfer footprint that was Ray Wallace's and the organic one of Jerry Cruz. Absolutely different. And actually, the guy who carved the foot for Ray was gunning for him, and Ray was horrified that this guy was going to show up and shoot him because he thought that he made a bunch of money on it, and he never did. But he never paid him anything for it. So there's so much.
Right. It makes no sense that the Wallaces would do that because they were losing employees. They were scared. They had a lot of Native Americans that were working for them that wanted nothing to do with the Sasquatch stuff going on.
That's right. But years later, that's when they came out in the 80s and said, yeah, my dad was Sasquatch and everything. Even Ray even claimed that his mother was dressed in a suit for the Patterson-Gimlin film. So great. I was just roaring with laughter the whole time. And so many stories about like John Green and Titmus. Oh, brother, some great stories about Titmus. And one really amazing story about Bob Titmus. When Peter Byrne came to Humboldt County to Bluff Creek, he was going in to meet the people that had been taking money from Tom Slick for a few years for hunting Bigfoot and finding out if they're worth anything. And two of them were in jail. One of them lived in San Francisco, and he's cutting these people off. And John Green wouldn't even answer the phone, and his wife did, and he wouldn't speak to him. So he said, "Okay, we're not going to employ you anymore." But Bob Titmus. Very one who
there you go.
that was a phone call came in. Bob Titmus, who's the very one who there we go, who taught my great uncle how to take a plaster cast. He had a secret project he was working with for Tom Slick for. So he had Peter Burns couldn't touch him, and there were times when Peter Burns and my great uncle, and they were walking, and Bob Titmus were walking down this path, and Bob Titmus would go, oh, look, it's a baby Bigfoot print. And Jerry and Peter looked, that's a bear print. What are you talking about? No, that's a baby Bigfoot print. Took a picture of it and sent it to Tom Slick. And yeah, I found a baby Bigfoot print. And it was like, what is this going on? But later on, there was a point where Tom Slick was coming to town to meet with Titmus. So they all went to a campsite, and Peter got there early with his brother and cooked breakfast, and Jerry was there. They're waiting for Tom to get there. Tom came in, and they had breakfast. And all of a sudden, Bob Titmus drives up in this little car. Bob Titmus was going to show him what he's been working on for years, this secret project. And so they get in this car, and they disappear for 2 hours. And they're like, well, what happened? Finally come back. This car pulls up, drops him off, and Bob Titmus races away in a puff of smoke. And Slick comes into the thing. He goes, oh, I need a drink. So he got a drink, and I need another one. And he finally tells him, yeah, this is what happened. He took us up to this area, and we had to crawl for 300 yards through these briar patches full of thorns in the blazing, like it was hot. It was like sticky nightmare. Finally came into a clearing, and it was supposedly Bigfoot's toilet. And there was a tree in the middle of the clearing, and they were just there. And there was a sense of something about to happen, and they just waited there for a second. And Slick goes, "Man, we got to get a camera. We got to get some shots. What's going on?" And suddenly they heard this giant thing coming through the bushes, and they're like, oh, and they were freaking out. And they saw this shape move out of the bushes and approach the tree, and they looked up, and it was an Indian on a horse. And the Indian got off the horse, tied his horse to the tree, and Tom Slick came out of the bushes and said, "Excuse me, my name is Tom Slick. We're hunting Bigfoot, and what are you doing here?" And he goes, "I've been coming here for many years to get my herbs. This is where I get my herbs." And all of a sudden, they saw the horse take a big dump on top of this big pile of crap that was already there. And then, and Tom Slick looked at Timmons, and Timmons was like, "Oh." And then actually, they just left, and he dropped him off and just didn't say anything. And he actually went up to Seattle or something and just kind of disappeared. But that's the big story about Timmons. Yeah, it was kind of sad, but very funny to find out, though.
So how serious was Jerry after he found the footprints and trying to locate the Sasquatch? I mean, he was drawing maps and
well, he was pissed. He was upset because at first he thought he was being punked, but then he realized, because then he never actually saw them, but he smelled them, he sensed their presence, he heard them, he knew they were right there. With my Uncle Jim, there were times when they were driving back on a dark road, and one of them went across they saw one go across the road, and they pulled over, and they could smell it. And I mean, they were right there. And he never changed his story. He's just, this is absolutely true, because there's no way you could fake prints going just down the side of these ravines that are so steep. There's no way. You break your leg. There's no way. The ravines on the side of Mount Shasta are very, very steep. The screenplay I wrote, the print opens up with my Uncle Jim, coolest uncle in the world, man. He was a Harley riding. He ended up working for the Steinhardt Aquarium years later, and used to take me behind the scenes and show me the needle-nosed gar. He used to swim with the dolphins, man. This guy was so cool. He is so cool. And right now he helps old eagles and falcons and who are injured in the wild, and he gets them back to life, and he sets them free. He's so cool. But he was traveling back one of these roads they carved out. It was getting dark, and he was on his Harley. And when it gets dark in the woods, baby, yeah, it's black.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He was trying to get back up to his motorhome with his laundry strapped to the back, and he blew a sprocket. And so he got off, and he grabbed his laundry, and he started hoofing it up to the motorhome. And he could see the creek, Willow Creek, down through the trees. And as he's walking, he senses he's being followed. And he looks down, and he could see a shadow, shadowing him as he walked. So he got a little freaked out, and he started walking a little faster, and the thing started walking a little faster. And he started hoofing it, and it did too. And he stopped. He picked up a rock, and he threw it, and it hit the thing. And the thing got down on his haunches and howled. And it said it froze his blood. And he ran all the way back to the cabin, or to was a motorhome. And he jumped in, he slammed it, and there wasn't anything else that happened. He thought he heard some stuff, but that was it. But he remembered that howl for the rest of his life. And they heard it later on. But that's the opening of my film. Yeah.
How about your pop? Did he have any experiences while he was out there?
He heard them. He heard them a lot. He didn't have any run-ins with them. But he would water down the roads because they were so dusty that they couldn't even walk through without putting up a big puff of dirt. So he had these vehicles that would spray down the roads with water, and that's what he was teaching his brother Jim to do. But he definitely heard them. Yeah, he definitely heard them. He passed away in 2017 before I really got into go deep with him as far as, questioning stuff. But I've heard these stories all my life. Actually, it's so funny. when I was about 13 years old, I talked about Bigfoot in my show and tell at school because, in my family. And I went in there and I was talking about Bigfoot, the wild man in the woods, and everyone was like, "Yeah, it's a bunch of nonsense." And the teacher was like, "Carl, these stories are not true." And I started crying. I was like, "No, I didn't know how to handle it." And so later on, I went home and I was really bummed out. My father drove in from, he drove in late always from surgery, and he came up and to my bedroom and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Man, they didn't believe me at school. I talked about Bigfoot." He goes, "Okay, hold on." He went out, came back in, he brought a print and he laid it on my dresser. And he goes, "This is from your great uncle. Your great uncle found the prints and took a plaster cast. Your great uncle knew." He goes, "You don't have to worry about what other people say because you know it's true. They don't know, so don't be affected by that." And he's so funny. What we had done was we hooked up a intercom that went from my third floor to the basement where he drove in when he was coming back, so I could say hi, to him. And we had just hooked it up. So he said, "Just go to bed." He prayed over me and he turned out the light. He said goodnight. And what I didn't know is he flipped on the intercom and he went down to the basement. And I literally got up and he laid the cast on my bed, and I had my little flashlight. I was looking at the cast. Oh, wow. And I got back in bed. I was just, I was scared. And all of a sudden I heard, "Ooh," coming through. And I was like, "Ah!" It was so funny. He ran back upstairs. He thought I had shoved my head through the bedpost. And he goes, "No, that was me on the intercom." So this is the kind of humor that my dad was. He was so cool. But actually, that's in the movie too. Yeah.
So when did Patterson approach your uncle?
Patterson never did. It was actually Al Hodges that came by when he had visited Titmus a few times, showing him the print. And at first, he showed him a drawing, a cardboard cutout of the print and Titmus said, "Someone's faking you out. This is not real." And then when he finally showed him the cast, he goes, "Well, I don't know. Al Hodges, a friend of mine, is going to be in town." He goes, "Well, would he like to come by and see it?" He goes, "Sure." So he came by Jerry's house and he showed him it. And he said, "Well, it's probably someone faking you out. We don't know." But Jerry drew the map and he gave it to Al. And it ended up in Titmus, and that's who gave it over to Gimlin and Patterson.
Okay.
But I have a note from Titmus saying to Jerry, saying, "You know what? That cast is real, and those prints are real. I finally fully believe that they're totally real." I have that note from him. Yeah.
How did Jerry realize that their best chance was to go down near that creek down there and follow that route? Was he always down in through there?
Didn't know. No. He didn't know. He found the prints around his bulldozer.
Right, but
He drew. They were all around his bulldozer. There was all these incidents that happened where a 600-pound tire was picked up and bounced over the river, over the edge, and they had a 700-pound oil drum that was picked up. It wasn't dragged; it was picked up and thrown over the side. Right. So whatever these things, it wouldn't. It was very strong. You had to be you couldn't humanly do that. And so there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But he would come by and see these prints, and he got really mad when he first saw me. He goes, "Yeah, who's doing this to me? I'm counting to kick your butt." And that's when he actually went to town, and that's when he showed a cardboard cutout of the print to Titmus, and "Hey, go, here's your kit. This is how you take a plaster cast." So that's who taught him how to do it. So,
well, what were the Native Americans? The Hoopa or the Hope? How do you say?
Yeah, the Hoopa. He used to
Hoopa.
He used to teach Sunday school to the Hoopa children. He wouldn't live up on the site because he was teaching Sunday school to the children on the weekends. So he would be driving in every Monday and leaving every Friday. And so he knew a lot of Hoopa, and they were very, very, this is a Sasquatch. They had no problem believing that in Sasquatch at all. Yeah, so he talked to a lot of the Indians about it. Yeah,
he actually wore. I read somewhere that he actually wore moccasins to work,
he's so cool.
Yeah, no, I've been doing a lot ever since I've his story needs to be told. You're exactly right, and I
Yeah,
cannot wait for this to happen because
yeah.
it is very, very cool. And you're the man to do it because with
Well,
the way you dig into history and how you, I mean, you're the man to do it.
well, I tell you, I mean, this is not going to be a little low budget movie. It has to be big. It has to be big because it's the guy who named Bigfoot, who took the first placer cast, and no one has. It's like the Patterson Gimlin film. No one can disprove it. No one's disproved it yet. Yeah, so it qualifies to be done on a very big scale, and yeah, I'm not going to rest until it is. I mean, I have friends of mine, filmmakers, who, yeah, we did Bigfoot's Wild Weekend. It's really hilarious and funny, but this is the real deal, and that's
Right.
why I strove. I actually showed parts of my script to parts of the families to make sure everyone was cool with it. You know, that it's correct, because I strove that would be exactly what happened. You know. So that's why it took 2 years to do it. Yeah.
Right. Other than the map, what is the how'd you would word it, the coolest thing that you found out about your Uncle Jerry that he did back then? What's, other than that, I think that map is just unreal, but what's the coolest thing you've
Oh,
dug up?
wow. Well, I mean, I have one of the prints. It's a fourth pass, so it's not all crunchy. It doesn't. It's all smooth. But one of the prints my mother accidentally broke doing laundry. Yeah, like if she only knew. Yeah. But the one I have is actually from my aunt Elsie, who lent it to my uncle Jim, who gave it to me. And yeah, but I mean, he had 3 accidents when he was logging. Logging is very dangerous.
Hmm.
There was one thing where his one of the logs snapped back and broke all his teeth out. And even my uncle Jim was picked up and thrown, and had to go to the hospital. And I mean, there was 3 things that happened to Jerry. There was his teeth that happened, and then he broke his back, and he was out for like 4 or 5 months. And he came back on. He was back and doing it, and then the last thing, the final last straw, was he stepped on a rusty nail, and it went right in, and he was out for, and that was it. He studied to be a engineer for Boeing, and he started working for Boeing, or for United Airlines. That's right, yeah. And that's when he moved to San Francisco and right by it. So, yep, just amazing history. And I
Yeah.
just like there's so much history in my family. My uncle, or my grandfather, who I never met, was an Army colonel, and he died when my father was 13. They gave him anesthetic that he was allergic to when he was having a simple operation, and he died. But he was so beloved by his squadron that they flew all through World War II, that they built him a plane from salvaged parts of ones they shot down. They loved him so much. And actually,
Oh,
he ended up working for William Randolph Hearst. Actually, he wasn't working for him, but he did things for William Randolph Hearst. He was head of agriculture in California for a couple of years. And William Randolph Hearst hired him to procure Arabian horses for him. So he got to go up to the ranch, which is the castle, you know. And he remember my dad said, yeah, my dad goes, hey, John, you want to go up to the ranch? And like, he grew up on a ranch. He's like, no, he didn't know it was the castle. And he actually got to go up there later and swim in both pools and stuff, you know. But then on that side of the family, there was horticulturists and just all these incredible people I kept finding out about. So it was really kind of cool, man. It was just
oh.
finding about my roots. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I can't wait for it to be picked up and come out. We're gonna open up the questions in capital letters for our friend Carl here. If you guys got any questions about anything that we discussed tonight, I we're gonna have to have Carl back again because there's just so much to take in all at once. My
I
mind
can
is in
actually,
overload right now.
when I have you back in, I'll give you a tour through the auditorium and I'll show you everything. Yeah.
That'd be cool. We could do it. Yeah, we could have you back.
No problem.
So, yep. So if anybody's got any questions, all in caps, please. So, what else is going on? What do you got coming up next after the the Jerry thing?
Well, actually, I'm writing Jeffrey Dahmer #2. I'm writing the prison years. And actually, Jeffrey Dahmer became a Christian in prison. Yeah. And And people go, "Oh, that's ridiculous." Every serial killer becomes a Christian. No, they don't. And it's not a deathbed confession type of thing. He took a Bible course and struggled for 9 months with how could God ever forgive me. And the pastor who put out the Bible course came and visited him weekly, and finally he accepted Jesus in prison, and and then he wanted to be baptized, and they wouldn't let him. But he later got a hold of a pastor who snuck in and baptized him, and 2 weeks later he was murdered. So that's just, it's called the movie is called So As Through Fire, and I'm actually about 3/4 of the way through that. But yeah, there's a bunch of other projects on my roster. So yeah, I'm just taking one at a time, baby. Yeah.
No, I'm intrigued big time. I got 1,000,001 questions myself, but
Cool.
let's see. I don't know. I think the chat froze up here. Something happened to the
It's
chat.
like that.
No, it's frozen for some reason. It's not even moving. Huh.
Bunsen burner will help.
Yeah, I don't understand. It's never done this before.
Okay. Supernatural.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You wanted to touch base on your supernatural stuff a little bit tonight too.
Well,
So
we've had 3 paranormal investigations here because of our dead bodies, and they can't find anything. They're really upset. There was one called Erie, California, which is really nice English lady, and she came through with her camera. I see. My first thing is like you cannot use a Ouija board, you cannot use a scrying mirror, you can't use any tools of the occult. I don't care if you use electromagnetic, radiation detectors or whatever. That's fine, but no occultic artifacts can be used to contact anything. And they just couldn't find anything around my dead bodies, and they were really mad. But one thing, they came backstage, the lady did, and they had a cameraman and another woman, and there's a long hallway backstage, and they were going down it in the dark. All of a sudden, around, don't turn around. There are 6 eyes looking at you from in that corner. And they turned around there, and they saw 6 eyes, and they got closer. It was a mirror ball. Hello. But they came back out on stage, and there were orbs. And this is usually what happens when someone who's a paranormal investigator, they bring things with them. Things follow them. And so they capture some orbs on stage that followed them in. And but they're gone now, because I don't let anything stay here. But
right.
but go ahead.
What do you think that the link between the paranormal and the Sasquatch are? Because the orbs are seen around
0.
the Sasquatch. Why are they together then? What do you think?
0. Because people naturally see something they can't explain. Oh, it must be supernatural. And the people who believe in UFOs and ghosts, and they love to scoop it all together, and oh, well, it must be supernatural because they can't explain it. And so it's a natural thing. Oh, we can't explain it, must be supernatural. So that's generally, I think, why.
Yeah, because it's reported hand and foot with the orbs in the Sasquatch.
I know, but you have to understand, demons can take any form they want to. So of course they could take a form of a Bigfoot, orbs, whatever they can do, whatever they want. So I'm sure that a percentage of the sightings are demonic, just like this percentage. I think most UFO sightings are demonic. They're not from another planet. They're interdimensional. And if you want to call it interdimensional being, demon, whatever, it's the same thing. They're not from another planet. They didn't create us. And there's too many parallels between the occult and parapsychology or paranormal to just disregard. They're exactly the same. That means it's coming from the same source. And basically, it's the father of lies, baby, and you better understand what that means. Yeah.
Right. We got a question for you. What scares you, Carl? Boots on the ground wants to know what scares you.
You just scared me. I think humans do more than anything. I mean,
They are scary.
I'm not scared of monsters or. I mean, I can't wait to go up be in the woods alone and hear a Bigfoot howl. I can't wait for that. But I'm not scared of the supernatural. I'm scared of crazy people. You know, psychopaths
Yep.
and stuff like that.
Yep,
There's a
they're
lot of them.
scary. Yes.
Actually, when I worked at the mortuary, I had a business partner who later became my business partner at the institute. We were the two student embalmers. We had the two student apartments at the mortuary, and we used to go hiking in Muir Woods. And we were up on the trail, and we were climbing the Muir Woods. It's gorgeous, like a redwood forest. It looks like you went back in time. It's so cool. Mount Tamalpais. And we're climbing up this one trail, and there's some guy stomping around up there, just all crazy. I'm like, oh, well, San Francisco, whatever. Yeah. You see it all the time. Keep going. And he looked at us, and he waved us back with a gun. I'm like, We jolted down to the parking lot, went to a payphone. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. It's called a payphone. They used to be everywhere. And I called the cops. And while I'm calling the cops and telling them there's somebody with a gun up here, a woman jogged by me and went up on the trail. I said, don't go up there. This guy with a gun. She's like, ah, ha, ha. She kept going. And all of a sudden we heard bang. That was the last victim of the trailside killer. Now, his name was Carpenter. And our mortuary buried this woman. And during the service, one of the morticians saw the personalized license plate of the serial killer driving by because he knew she was being buried there. And there's a book called The Sleeping Lady, which is written by Gray Smith, the guy who wrote the Zodiac book. And it's about Mount Tamalpais, but it's about the Carpenter, the trailside killer. If you turn over the book, on the back is my business partner, Robert, and two other morticians taking that woman out of the bushes. And it turned out this serial killer lived 2 blocks from my business partner when he lived in Mount Tamalpais, Twin Peaks. And actually tried to sell him some pot one time when he just rode by. I mean, and then when we were picking up bodies in San Francisco to bring them over to San Rafael to the mortuary in the hearse, we would be going through an area, and I remember seeing this personalized license plate right in front of us multiple occasions. It finally all clicked. So pretty creepy. Yeah, pretty creepy. It's like they're out there a lot more than you think. I say I grew up in an incredible time in San Francisco, but it was far more dangerous than I would ever imagine.
Right. That's why I tell people, never go hiking by yourself. Don't go by yourself. So much can happen.
Yeah, not unless you got a piece, baby.
Right, yeah.
Or something,
Even then, you're not. Even then, a Sasquatch or anything that now it's the dogman thing that's going on.
Yep.
Which every report of a dogman's evil, and these things are evil.
Well, Mothman, Dogman. I mean, my friend Ken Gearhard, who is from Michigan, Alaska, he speaks everywhere on Bigfoot conferences, and they're very well known.
Yeah. No, Ken. Yep.
Yeah. He was even appeared in that little Bigfoot.
Yeah. You were just watched that the other day.
He was there investigating giant salamanders. He's so cool. What was I going to say? I have no idea. Well, he came by to my museum, and I showed him the Bigfoot stuff, and he was shocked that he was my great uncle Jerry Crew. But my point was, I think it's on top of my head. I've totally forgot. What were we just talking about?
We were talking about the Dogman.
Oh yeah. Okay. So he very prolific on speaking about Dogman and Mothman and all that stuff. And there is a very demonic element to this thing. I think there's a very Dogman and Mothman are associated with Indian burial grounds and spirits and everything else. And it's a phenomenon, but there's a line between this and Bigfoot. I believe Bigfoot is totally real. It's physical. And Mothman and Dogman, not so much. I mean, they can appear, and so it's once again, it's the line between Adam's family and Anton LaVey. Yeah.
Do you believe there's a war coming? Do you believe that the good versus evil is on its way?
Oh, it's been going on for thousands of years.
Well, I
It's
know
all right
that, but
now.
I mean, it seems that there's more sightings of all these creatures now, and there's
And you
rake
know why?
sightings,
It's
and there's
because heaven is pressing in, and the enemy knows his time is short. So, man, it's exploding. It's going
right,
on crazy. Everything's going on crazy. I mean, come on, the last 6 years, we've been living in a horror movie. I mean,
right,
it's absolutely it's not only hilarious, but it's outrageous and horrifying
right,
too at the same time. I mean, the stuff we've seen is crazy. Everything is being exacerbated
right.
because it's all.
The rules aren't being followed anymore.
Oh, absolutely not. And they never really were, but they're. But the cool thing about it is everything's out in the open now. So with the light of the scripture, you can see what everything is. You can see all the cockroaches for what they are. Because
Right,
when you hold the light of the scripture up, you see what the deal is. Yeah. That's
right.
the key. That's the key.
So, do you think the Sasquatch might be the protectors of the forest, and they're the ones that are going to protect it from the evil, or
No,
you don't look
that's
at them like that?
legend. That's a legend. Oh,
Uh,
the protectors of the forest. No. I mean, they may, who knows? I mean, they may view themselves like that because that's their home. I mean, of course,
right, right,
and I think they're not they're thinking creatures. I mean, they're human.
right.
So who knows what they think of themselves? And that's a very interesting subject, actually. Um, yeah. So you have to
Yeah.
be very careful with the legend people try to sew into everything, and yeah, we have to have discernment to evaluate things and see how it weighs out. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now that's just mind blowing.
Yep, that's right. Got to be standing
Scary.
on the rock, baby.
Yeah, yeah. I
Rock of
mean,
Jesus, yeah.
all right, we got time for a couple more questions, then we're gonna let Carl go on with his night, Pete. So, capital letters, and I just want to thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday night and spending it with
My
us.
pleasure, man.
It was awesome, and I got to get out to L.A. How much longer are you gonna be in L.A.?
I have no idea. We're thinking about moving our home museum to Las Vegas.
Sin
So
City.
yeah, they need it. They need it bad, baby. A lot of people need it. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's has enough entertainment and enough city where I can be comfortable being from San Francisco, and you can get away a lot cleaner than they called North Hollywood the armpit of the valley. So yeah, I'd be happy to be out of North Hollywood, but
What I've noticed throughout this interview that you've been around a lot. Why do you think that is? Are you supposed to be in these places? I just like your last comment where you were at the mortuary and you're around that serial killer, and you're around all this other stuff throughout the whole interview.
I think there's a purpose for it. I think that there's a reason for it. And actually, my club, I've got to talk to a lot of people who've been deeply involved in the occult, and they're trapped, and I've been used to help them escape from the chains because you're chained, man. When you're chained, you're so scared. I had one paranormal investigator that couldn't sleep more than 3 hours a night because he was so scared all the time, and it's a trap. So I believe all my experience is to gear it towards people that need to hear a good word about escape, about uh, becoming a new creature, about letting go of the past, about realizing there is a plan for your life, and living to the full, receiving everything that God has for you instead of missing out on it. That's what I feel, and I've been able to help a lot of people that get away from the occult. So, yeah, and it's
Right,
just because I've known about it all my life. I've studied it all my life. So, um, I don't claim to be an expert, but I'm a bookaholic too. Yeah,
right. No, it's
yeah.
awesome. I learned so much tonight. It's unreal.
All right. Well, it was my pleasure, man.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was awesome. Well, and something's happening with this chat. It freezes and then it goes. I had a couple questions and now it froze up again. So I don't know what's going on with it.
No problem. We'll just jot them down for the next time when I give you a tour.
Yeah, no, we're gonna definitely do the live tour. That's gonna be awesome. That's gonna be really awesome.
Cool. I look forward to that.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming here on Tuesday night and
My pleasure,
sharing
man. Thank you, Gary.
sharing
Great
all your
hookup.
stuff. Yeah,
Gary
Gary,
Shooty,
thank you,
isn't
Mr.
it?
Shooty. Yep. And we'll have you back again, my friend.
All right, bro. God
So,
bless you, man.
yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carl Crew.
Facebook CI Abnormal Arts.
Yep.
Good night.
All right. All right. What a great show tonight. Carl is awesome. It just it's a mind blowing the stuff that comes, from someone like that. It just makes you think about everyday life and just I don't even know how to word it at the moment. I'm so my mind is all scrambled right now. But I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. I'm sorry that it froze up and that tuned in tonight again on Tuesday night. Next week we have Mr. Connor Flynn will be on the show. Bigfoot Anonymous himself. I think he's going to run the show himself. I'm going to just turn him on and let him loose, and then I'll come back in an hour, and then we'll go from there. We're getting a couple. Carl's backstage, so I hope he didn't leave me. So thank you all once again. And as Larry always says, get in the woods, people.